Hey, must be Thursday. Family Matters with Kevin Petersen.
Yes, it is. Woo-hoo.
How are you? How are you, Kev?
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Very bushy, evidently. I got some serious bushy hair going on here.
You should have gotten into hair and makeup this morning. I mean, with our whole production team.
Well, evidently there was a bottleneck there. Somebody was, ahead of me that was taking a long time.
Those dang producers.
Yeah, sure.
How is life? Nearing the holidays. But how's life?
Life's good. I have to say, life's good. I'm very, very fortunate, very blessed. I lead a very good life. I'm very happy. And we're having a good time here. The weather's nice. Played a little golf on Sunday. Didn't play well, but I played golf. Had a lot of fun, and I didn't lose the normal amount of balls. That was pretty cool.
You depressed me. I mean, ever since this whole Nashville move, it's been a crappy kind of week and a half.
Yeah.
Just with rain and colderish weather than I'm used to, but the sun is out today. Too much so. It's shining right on me. I guess I got the sunlight of the spirit on me. But anyway, life is good for me. It's going to be a low-key holiday season, which is, I think, just what I need. So looking forward to it. So, alrighty. What do
you got?
Well, we have a question, but so I think it's a common question families, have and so forth. I don't have the question in front of me, but I can paraphrase pretty well. So, there is a son that is in early recovery. I don't exactly remember how much. But I'm pretty sure it was mom. Is talking about there was a divorce at a young age and kind of a messed up relationship with his dad. And then there's some traumas that she said she doesn't want to get into. And so as a family, I'll just say this as a blanket statement. So families, I think, want or worry that they get into recovery, but yet they're not necessarily dealing with those quote unquote traumas or the things that happened in the past. The mom says doing well, but is there something within the recovery circles that deals with that heavy trauma is what her question is.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. You run that by me again?
So we all come in with recovery. I'll put it in terms with divorce, and there may be some traumas, whatever they may be, abuse, so forth like that. And so I think parents want to know, like, are they ever going to talk about that? Is that something they talk about within recovery circles? Is there something within the recovery community that deals with traumas?
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So when somebody's in, now I'm sorry, I was getting the trauma part, but not the beginning part. Okay. Great question. Phenomenal.
It's shocking that you hang on to the trauma part, Mr. Clinician.
I'm sorry, what? I wasn't paying attention to what you said. So the thing about trauma is, in order to start treating it with one of the traditional methodologies, EMDR, somatic, whatever work we're going to do, there has to be a level of stability and consistency in the person's life, right? And that really doesn't come within 30 days. So that's why you're going to be looking probably more at a 60, 90-day, 6-month engagement, because what's going to happen, right, is it's going to bring up stuff, and we don't want it to bring up too much stuff and overwhelm them, so they go back to the substance abuse. So it's kind of a what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of one of those things that between the individual and their therapist, they really have to sort of figure out, how much of this can you handle? because we don't want to flood you. We don't want to overwhelm you and then have you get freaked and then go back to self-medicating. So, so I understand that people are always like, he has trauma. We got to do trauma. He's got to start doing trauma. I'm like, I understand that. I totally get that. But that doesn't happen overnight. It's, I mean, I still do trauma work myself with my therapist, and it's very overwhelming and it's very intense. And, you know, she's like, hey, I just want to make sure you're not going to do this and then rush into like 6 hours of therapy, or, you know, I want you to have some time to chill down and cool and feel and let it all flow through you and engage with you. And so it's the same thing with somebody in young sobriety, whether they're in treatment or out of treatment. It's, should they do it? They should definitely look into it. Yes, absolutely, because everybody who's in recovery has some trauma. Um, uh, and I think, you know, that's, yeah, it's one of those things where you have to allow the clinician to figure out where the individual is and sort of work their way through. And there's so many different methodologies that I think are really wonderful. You know, EMDR. Just get some crazy comments here, bro. It's an interesting. So, you know, there's breath work, right? There's yoga can be very healing for trauma. There's trauma yoga. You know, there's EMDR. There's somatic experiencing. There's lots of different ways to do trauma. So it's really about finding what works for the individual and where they're at. The real question is, are they ready for it? See, it only took me 7 minutes to get to the answer. You know, are they ready for it?
How about the age old, where do you, I think we've probably talked about this, but I mean, you probably get the calls, you know, especially, you know, working for a treatment center now. I mean, do you put any stock into current clinician while in treatment and the client not getting along with that certain clinician, and mom and dad may be saying, is there any chance that they can switch clinicians? Are they out of their lane when you deal with those calls, or how do you deal with?
You know, that's a great question. That's a really good question. And so how I approach that is, let's take a look at what's going on and why. Okay, because let's be honest, I get that. I get that feedback a lot. Like, oh, we're not sure we like Kevin. We're not sure we like the way he goes about things. And you know, my supervisor or people that I work with, I'm like, well, okay, why? You know, is he rude? Is he not courteous? Is he abrasive? No, we just don't like the topics. We don't like the way he's doing things. Ah, okay. So what you're saying is he's touched on a nerve. And so it's really kind of the same thing with the individuals, you know. Pardon me, something in my throat. I want to know why the person why do we think we need a different therapist? And, you know, and here now we're going to talk about the classic triangle, right? So there's the kid, the person. I say kid because I'm 60 and everyone's a kid. There's the client, and then there's the therapist, and then there's mom and dad of the family. Pardon me, God, you obviously touched a nerve here.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. Finally,
this is the closest thing to speechless that I can get. I'll take the win.
The belching is good for you. You like that? That makes you feel good. Okay. So we have the client, the therapist, and the family. And so instead of the client going to the therapist and saying, "Hey, I'm uncomfortable with what's going on here. I don't like this," they're going to mom and dad or whoever, and then mom and dad are communicating that. So now we're completing the triangle. What I would like to do is break that and say to the individual, hey, if you struggle with this person, oh my gosh, I totally grasp that. I get it. Let's sit down and talk about why. And then let's bring that person in, because I want to teach you how to deal with conflict in a really positive, you know, compassionate way, so that you can move forward in life and be like, hey, you know, you're a good person. I just don't fit with you, you know? And, you know, 9 times out of 10, the answer is going to be no. Let's just be clear, because A, we want you to work on it. And B, we really don't let people that are newly sober pick their therapist. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's got a lot to do with it too, is that, you know, we really think it's a good idea for you to engage and learn and understand. You know, in that friction, there's lots of really cool stuff to look at and figure out.
So
Yeah.
I wanted to actually, I just remembered whatever you said tipped me off to something that it happened 2 or 3 weeks ago or something. We skipped over it. I did. I don't even want to put we because you didn't skip over it, but it reminded me. And so I want to go into another question, unless there's another topic. I mean, are you done with that? It's say I get really excited when I remember things, and then I just kind of ignore you, and then I just go to mine. But so I thought it was a fascinating question, and it goes directly to what we're doing. We have a question that was saying, Kevin, I've heard you say numerous times, obviously the financial aspect to it is a big part within families, and thankfully we're able to, you said something about emotional resources or emotional whatever it may be. She wants to know really what does that mean, and she's like, so what ultimately are you saying that we as a family need financial resources and emotional resources when their loved one's in early recovery, and just kind of want to expand on what's that emotional resources? I don't know if you remember. I don't necessarily remember what she's talking about, but do you know what are some emotional resources that we can give families early in recovery? I guess would be the question.
Emotional resources? No, that's great. No, I definitely, yeah. I mean, I that part of the
It
question.
sounds like something you'd say.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of therapy nonsense that comes out of my mouth when I'm sort of in my, I put on my therapy hat and I'm like, well, let me tell you.
It's a good, but what ticked me, or what kind of got my ears perked up is, yes, we all talk about the financial resources and the financial kind of how much is in the bank, but what we're asking families is really to put kind of emotional into, like, deposit some emotional resources within a bank that no one really talks about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's critical. So, one of the things I always talk to the families about is, okay, so your person's in therapy or you're in treatment, and that's great. But now, that 30, 60, 90, 6 month, a year, however long the stretch is, that is your opportunity to take a breath and take care of yourself, and by that I mean individual therapy. Attend whatever the treatment center offers in the way of like a family program or a family meeting or that sort of thing. And then, I think a lot of what we call psychoeducation, so read the material that is out there that's available for things like, understanding addiction, understanding recovery, understanding codependency, understanding trauma, understanding family systems, understanding, guilt, shame, and vulnerability, understanding mindfulness, as I want you to be taking care of you, because this living with someone who struggles with addiction is super traumatic to the family, and they're getting pummeled just as badly as the individual is. So I want them to be putting, like, making deposits into their emotional, bank account by taking care of themselves. Just putting the person in treatment is a big step, but then there's so much more after that.
Yeah. And reading the big book. I mean, I think you were the one that originally kind of said it, or whoever did it, but I think it's surprising how when I get families to read the actual thing that their loved one's probably going to be living out of, their direction manual, families really are educated alone just by reading the first 164 pages of the big book.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, they get a lot out of it. I mean, it's really funny. I tell them to read the big book, they read the whole thing. And a lot of times they're like, my favorite part was the stories. I'm like, oh, okay. I meant just like the beginning, but I'm glad you liked it,
Well,
Yeah,
it's come. So it's interesting. The last couple of days, along the same kind of topic, is this in meditation. I heard something that kind of tipped me off into a meeting, and my mind works in mysterious ways, and so it's kind of expanded, and it's almost, I'm really gotten to the point where I see what I saw myself doing is always driving down the wrong way, the wrong way, and I had so many people clearing the road ahead that I would never know the difference, or I knew I was going the wrong way, but I was never had any issues because so many people were out in front of me kind of clearing the way. And recovery, I think the biggest shift in my life is actually driving on the right side of the street. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be nonstop. There's going to be stop signs, there's going to be people in my lane, there's going to be all, but life is so much easier when you're driving on the right side of the road. And I think too many times we have families kind of clearing that road for people. And I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong, but for me, I never knew life driving in the right direction, if that makes sense. And I think it's, I did a lot of journaling around it, and it's kind of been like freeing. Like I'm 16, years sober or something, and it's not like I was thinking about drinking or anything, but that in itself, it just feels like holy, like I think more people would kind of learn if they understand driving, in my version, driving down the wrong way, and the damage that families do by clearing that way, in a sense.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And the thing is, they think what they're doing is is helping, and instinctively, I understand that, and I don't want them to feel bad about that. I was talking to one of my families this week, and they're like, "God, we read your book, and we're like, geez, we did everything wrong." Like, no, you were just following your instincts. Your instincts are when your child's in distress is to try to fix it and solve it and take care of them. But when your child's 25 or 35, it's like, okay, so they're not a child anymore. When they're 12, 14, 16, that's when you're supposed to start this process of them taking over and you disengaging and saying, well, now it's time for you to learn and start handling things, and you're learning in an environment where the consequences are really low. And so, not that I want everyone to suffer, but let's be honest, that tends to be, how we learn how to make good decisions is by making bad decisions and saying, oh, that didn't work. I'm going to try it this way next time, And so, that's okay. That's all part of the process. And, but I think it's just letting the family understand that, there's a way to do that with a great big piece of love in your heart and saying, I love you. But the answer is no. And the reason why the answer is no is I want you to learn how to solve this problem. Now, I will offer you support. Do you need a tutor? Do you need a sober coach? Do you need a therapist? Do you need a doctor? Sure, I'll help you with those things. Absolutely. But I'm not going to be your fix-it. I'm not going to be the family handyman. That's the job that I keep trying to get families to disengage from. I told another family this week, I want to take you out of the addict management business. And nothing personal, you're doing a really bad job, And they're like, no, I know we are. I said, it's okay. It's because you're not a professional. I always say, what do you do for a living? Well, how would you feel if I walked in one day and said, I'm taking over? They'd be like, you'd be completely underwater. I'm like, right. So let me help you find the right process,
Life is so much easier driving down the right side of the street. I'll just say that. But anyway, it's for, families don't know the difference. But when you see a family that are putting in healthy boundaries and doing the emotional kind of deposits into the bank, you can tell there's a huge difference. You can tell in the whole family and within the individual himself.
And also, by the way, it goes the other way too. When the families aren't willing to do the work, I can pretty much predict that the kid's not going to be willing to do the work either.
Wow.
That tends to be a hand-in-hand environment. When they're too busy or they're not interested, or they have all the reasons and stories and excuses why they're not going to be engaged. I can just tell you that after doing this for as long as I'm doing it, neither is the client. The client's like, hey, they're not doing it, I'm not doing it, And it's like, yeah, I get it. I wouldn't either, You know,
So
you
you're
gotta,
saying the family can set up failure.
yeah, it's not their fault. I'm not saying that, I'm not going to blame them for the
No,
individual.
yeah.
You know, but if if it's do as I say, not as I do, that's just not a good system. You know.
Well, good job, Kevin. I think you're going to be off for the rest of the holidays. Maybe we'll do something in 2 weeks. But hell of a job, Kevin. You brought it.
Hey man, it's my pleasure. It's great to see you as always. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa.
I almost said speechless, but we'll label it a tie. But I'm getting close.
Festivus for the rest of us.